How do you start a video about everything? I don't know. But today I want to talk about art. I want to talk about art. I want to talk about spirituality. I want to talk about the path that I have been on as a creative and as an artist. One that I think I started by thinking that art and spirituality were two separate paths. And then slowly over the last year or two, they've merged into one path. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that experience in case anybody else is going through the same thing or experiencing something similar. I took notes. So if you see me looking down, I took some notes so that I can kind of tell this in a linear way. I grew up in a super conservative religious family and had done my best for a really long time to stay the course of, being the good Christian girl for a very long time. I remember in high school and college, deliberately setting things aside that I knew would challenge my faith too much, and being like, I'm not ready to confront that, or I can't let go of that at this point in my life. And then my grandmother passed in 2019, and that was truly, because there were some things I had distanced myself a little bit. But that was truly the beginning of my religious deconstruction. I'm in the throes of my grief about my grandmother, and people just kept saying oh, don't worry, you'll see her again someday. And that made me insane. I just could not. It was you don't know that. You don't know if I'm going to see her again. You have no idea. And the surety with which they were saying it to me was making me so angry. It made me so upset. Instead of someone just sitting and being wow, Kirsten, I'm so sorry, that you're grieving in this way, or being able to hold my grief in any way, it was the immediate pushing it off and this sort of awful Band-Aid of, oh, well, you'll see her again. No, that doesn't make, she's not here now. This is not making it any better. And that was really the start of when things started to kind of unravel for me. So spiritually, next, I sort of was starting to journey. Next, I sort of explored the idea of atheism, but that felt not quite true for me either. And even from a young child, we traveled a lot. I will never forget going to Alaska and seeing the snow-capped mountain ranges with waterfalls flowing through them. And it was just so beautiful. I just couldn't believe that it was an accident. There were too many beautiful things for it to be an accident. And so I've always had trouble, saying that there's completely no higher power at all. And also in my sort of exploration of atheism, I found that I didn't really like the way that it felt very similar to evangelicalism, actually, where it felt like they were almost two halves of the same coin, where both parties were telling me that they knew for sure something. They knew for certain, they were absolutely sure that there was no God, or they were absolutely sure that I would see my grandmother again. And the energy felt very similar, and one that I had already experienced, and so I think I put that aside as well. So after a time, I got more into spirituality, tarot. I love the idea of magic and magical things without even really knowing. I didn't even really know why at the time. And in that, I ended up being recommended The Artist's Way. And up until this point, I was in the corporate space as a designer doing art for everybody else but myself. I made art. The projects that I worked on in the corporate space were some that I could have never even fathomed working on, but it was all for everybody else. I had no creative practice of my own, and it felt like I needed to develop one at that point, right when I kind of found The Artist's Way. It was all right, clearly I'm creative. I have some art, I have some creativity inside of me, but I only know how to make things for other people. I don't know how to make anything for myself. And that didn't feel like it was something that I wanted to continue. I wanted to start making art for myself. I felt so jealous when I would look at illustrators or designers or whatever the medium, no matter the medium. I just felt that sense of jealousy. And I do kind of love that phrase of like, your jealousy like shows you kind of like where you need to go, because these people who were making just this gorgeous art for themselves and sharing it, I wanted to be like that. I wanted to have that for myself. And one of the things that the Artist's Way introduced me to was this idea of divine creativity, which I had never really considered creativity to be divine before, but it made so much sense to me. And it was almost like a moment of like remembering seeing those mountain ranges in Alaska for the first time and being like, oh, okay, divine creativity. Maybe that's what I was reacting to. It felt true for me for the first time. Something felt, okay, this feels true. I can believe in this. And that brought me to about 2 months ago, I took this artist workshop that I enjoyed. But one of the main components that I got from it that I think also shifted the way that I think about art and creativity as art as a higher power. And I had never, ever thought of art as a higher power before. And art as here before us will be here after us. Some of the only ways we know about ancient civilizations is because of their art, their pottery, their, buildings. That's why we know is the creative self-expression that they were able to create and make at those moments is some of the only reasons that we know about history, the writing, language as art, and in that thought process, I was like, oh my God, like art is what I believe in. I couldn't think of the question that the teacher had asked was, in the divine cosmos, who does art report to? And I couldn't think of who art reported to. Like, I genuinely spent a day racking my brain. Like, well, no, who would art report to? Nobody. And that, I think, was the next shift for me of oh, art itself, you're not even just a divine channel. Art is the divinity. And that is where I find myself at this juncture in my life of seeing art itself as divinity. And us as artists, and I can speak for myself specifically, my job is really to get out of my own way so that the divine creativity can flow through me. Get my ego out of the way, get my trust issues out of the way, get my past out of the way, get whatever else needs to be good and got out of the way so that whatever needs to come through can come through. And expanding my definition of art as everywhere. I've seen Excel spreadsheets that I'm like, oh my God, that's so creative. I've seen cards. I think people have such a narrow view of what it means to be creative or what it means to be an artist. And I reject that fully. I think anything can be art, truly. I truly do believe that. Food can be art. I think landscaping can be art. I'm into beading and embroidery, fashion, all of these things. Anything is art. I think it is the way in which you allow the divine creativity to flow through whatever medium you've chosen. And I can say that is the path that I'm on. And the entire reason that I've started this YouTube channel is to share my art. And for me, sometimes my art is my fashion or my makeup or my beading embroidery or whatever other project I'm working on, or interior design, as you can kind of see behind me. I want to share my art, and that is the entire purpose of this channel, is to share myself and to share my art with the world, And the sharing of art is really new for me. I've spent my entire life making art. I on another TikTok video I put up, I have pictures of what my childhood bedroom looked like. I was an artist from a very young age, but I never really shared it. I always kept it to myself. And I think there was a lot of narratives that I had sort of internalized about art being, my creativity being kind of like too much, too loud, just like so much. And so I kept it to myself for a very long time. And this channel is the beginning of changing that for myself and inspiring other people to share their art as well. I think like your art deserves to be seen. It is magic. And yeah, I would like for this channel to be truly transparent. In as much as like, I want to make light, fluffy videos, but I also want to talk about the depth of my own creativity and spirituality, which have become one and the same thing. Because I would not have the fashion or the whatever else it is that I'm making without, I think, this core aspect of it. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that today. It took me 4 times to get this video correct. Hopefully, 4th time the charm. Actually, I think 3 times. If you're an artist watching this, what has your journey been like? And what are some things that you've learned along the way or things that you have observed? Have you taken a similar path? Like, has your creative practice and your spiritual practice, have they become one and the same, or are they 2 separate, or do you operate in a completely different way? This is not to say that my way is the way. It's just the way that I'm on right now, the path that I find myself on. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.